Michael DiLeonardo, also known as Mikey Scars. The government says he's a high-ranking member of the Gambino crime family.
No Excuses with Michael DiLeonardo. I'm your host, RJ Roger, and what we're going to talk about today is my book, The Don, 36 Rules of the Bosses.
I'm very excited for this because I'm going to try to push you a little bit when we disagree. Feel free to yell at me. Tell me to shut the F up, whatever you want to do. I want your real emotion on here. If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong, but I will push back a little. So the book is essentially divided in two sections. Part one is the 5 stages of a boss's life. Okay. My own theory that a boss's life is 5 major stages. And then the second part of the book is just the 36 rules of the bosses that I will say the rules are not rules you guys claim to have. I just looked at the pure history of the mob. I did bosses only. I didn't look at what they claim. I looked at the behaviors, what they did. So it's not what you say we are, it's what your actions are saying. But the 5 stages, so I want to start with you there and I want to get your perspective on this. Every boss experiences at least 4 of the 5. Only certain bosses experience all 5 stages. So the very first one is what you called, I blasted my way in. I call that cooking pot, a guy that doesn't come from lineage. Just a guy who wasn't a part of it. He was just a street guy, impoverished guy on the street that got in through no connections. Then you got what I call the made boss. You would be more of like, if you were a boss, a made boss. You come from lineage, you come from a teaching, a schooling, a way of life. Whereas this other guy, he doesn't come from the schooling and the teaching part necessarily. He's not brought up in it as you are. So here's my question. When 2 people rise to boss, all right, you're both bosses, but you can be from 2 different beginnings. Like Paul and John Gotti. John Gotti, street guy, cooking pot, blasted his way in. Paul, a little more pampered, a little more white glove, white shoe boss. I have a belief that if those 2 types of bosses ever go to war, ever have a problem, there's a little bit of extra oomph, a little extra strength with the guy that blasts his way in, the cooking pot boss. He's been through more. He saw more pain. He's more distrusting. He's quicker to move. Is the boss that comes from lineage versus the boss that comes off the streets with no lineage, are they different in how they lead?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the boss that's been settled has been enriched already, and comes from that life, has all that deference around him. Yeah, he's be more. There's 2 ways he could go about that. He could be more pragmatic and think his way through situations and try to look for an easy end, like making Neil underboss, let's say, right? Since you mentioned Paul, right? There's an easy way, an easy fix to make compromise. And then there's the other way where he can be reactionary because he thinks he needs to be the hammer, which Paul was a hammer, by the way. The thing that Paul wasn't. Just that Paul came from a different area of thinking because of how he was more entitled and business savvy, that he thought everybody should be just about in business. And when you do that, you lose that edge as the wolf. There's sheep, there's shepherd, and then there's wolves, to quote a movie. Right? So you take a guy like John, for example, but just to digress on this, you could take John right here, because this is mostly contemporary to people that everybody knows. You as an historian and other people that know the life a little better, you could go to Frank Costello. Was his father in the mob? You go to Lucky. Was his father in the mob? You understand? These guys became students of the street, and then became teachers, and then became powerful, influential people. So they gathered that over longer periods of time. And don't forget, they were younger men. We're talking about guys in their early 20s that had to deal with this. These are the guys that war. That's why the term old mustache Pete's come around. These were the older mentality guys going back to that island and to the mainland, and the Draga, the Gamora, and Cosa Nostra. So you had those guys that were learning at a very early age, and it became those guys that rose to power, as you said, the boss mentality. Those guys had the upward mobility that guys like John and other bosses seen in guys and brought them up. Other people were intimidated with guys that had that ability to go up and be boss, i.e., Joe Messina. He killed everybody that was capable of maybe being a boss. Anybody that could be a threat to his position. He was more like a Caesar, if you think about it, right? He looked at a threat and took it out, even though maybe they weren't a threat. Maybe they were extremely loyal. More Machiavellian. And you would, I'll lean on you with that to expand on that after I finish my narrative here. But a guy like John, once you get into the street, and he did have some schooling, don't forget. John had a lot of schooling. What did Paul and everybody see in John the first time I met him in 1979 or 1980, whenever it was? And they put him on a committee to go around Tal Family with Joe Gallo as the concierge, pulling people in and telling them, you deal drugs, you die. They seen boss in John. I was told, there's our next boss. So John had something more than just blasting his way in the cooking pot. He had a little more. He had a great mentor, Agnello della Croce, right? So John had a lot of different skills. Kind of where Paul, you could say, lacked that street wolf mentality, where he erred on, I want a guy that opens a business. I want a guy that goes home and sleeps at night. But I still need those killers. I still need John Gotti. I still need Roy DeMeo. You still need those guys. And how do you treat them? He showed him really no respect. Showed it to John because that whole situation didn't boil yet, don't forget. Most people in the family that I knew at that time heard of a guy named John Gotti and respected him, including Frankie DeChico and others from my neighborhood. Holy Zach. So John comes up as the cooking pot guy, no lineage, nothing, come out of extreme poverty, right? And rises through his mind because he has to think differently. And I think this is to your point. He thought as a boss when he was a kid, and he seen that life and fell in love with it, like he told me. And he told all the older wise guys, your guys fought, you made me fall in love with this life. He seen himself as boss because he thought like that as a kid. The leadership skills that he had, he was born with, even though he had no lineage. And that's what propels him up. Being able to have people follow you, not for just being a shooter. They don't last. Otherwise, Roy DeMeo would be the boss, wouldn't he? The mistake here again is the development of a guy like Gravano, who did not have boss skills, as we see how he did with Joe Messina and Nicky Scarfo and other people. Step on his toe, and you have a problem. You're going to die. He did not think that, even though he had a great mentor in Tato. and could cite Tato all day long with certain stuff that Tato tried to teach him, but he never followed the bull, never followed the book. He never followed those rules. Tato was gangster's gangster. He was a murderer. He knew the rules. He never wanted to be boss. He knew he was happy being a captain. So these other guys that come into the picture, the cooker pot guys, like you say, they want to get up there, let's say, right? They want to get, but they're not capable. Disaster happens. See, with John, without those tapes, without Sammy killing, I think John goes to jail no matter what. John liked to talk. He was going to get in trouble even without all the Sammy stuff sooner or later. He knew his fate. But what he didn't see, and he blamed himself for that. I'm a clown. He didn't see what Gravano was doing. I'm the boss. I have the skills. I have the toughness. I have everything. John being John. And I let that guy move me around. Major flaw. So you take other bosses. Again, like I said, I like to talk about Joe Messina a little bit because he don't get enough credit for slaughtering his family.
Now, before you go on to Joe Messina, what's his lineage? Does he have lineage? Is he a cooking pot?
Cooking pot.
Cooking pot. I agree. Continue.
Yeah, it came from nowhere. But look who his good friends were. John Gotti, Gene Gotti. You know, he got in through Rusty. Rusty took a liking to him. And did Joe Messina have boss skills? You know what? I'm gonna disagree. He had the ability to have people killed. He had the ability to be in Rusty's ear and move him around. But look what he did to the family. He decimated it. You know, nobody talks about the damage he did because all those captains flipped under him. And then what does he do? Is he a real boss like John Gotti? I really bristle when he says John Gotti ruined the mob. Right? He had said that in testimony or somewhere, right? John Gotti ruined the mob. And then later on, after John went away, he was supposedly talking bad about John, that John did a lot of damage. Well, Joe, you fucking ratted. What was your game? You were Gravano. When you couldn't kill no more to get out of it, you ratted. So these are the different bosses, that come up through the years. Frank Costello, I know that's your man. And he is. He's a great example how to go through that life. And look what he did. He's the cutting of the roses guy. He's that fifth thing, I'm going to take a guess, that lives to talk about it.
Yes.
It's a good guess. I didn't read your book. Yeah. But when you said four, then it's Frank Costello, just try to put it together. He lived to talk and live another day, fight another day. But he didn't want to fight. He took the road of a smart boss. Okay, I advocate. See you guys later. Have fun. So I hope that helps you out with that one. I don't know if you differ with me, but
No. So I guess I would expound. I would push you on. And let me ask you this: if a cooking pot made boss, meaning a blasted his way in boss goes to war with a lineage boss, who has the edge? Just based on sheer this thing. Who has the edge?
Oh, the cunning edge is always going to be the street guy. The more cunning, I would say, more cunning. Absolutely. He's more of the wolf. The other guy may not have been thinking about it like a wolf for a while. He got too comfortable.
I agree. I think if 9 out of 10 times the cooking pot guy, he's going to beat you. And I don't think, and you brought up Lucky, cooking pot guy essentially, versus him going up against Maranzano, long lineage. You got those guys, Masseria and Clutch Ham Morello, these guys that had families in Sicily and stuff like that. Lucky beat everybody. And I almost think this, and tell me if I'm overthinking here. The cooking pot guy, he's not playing by the same set of rules. The lineage, this is our life. We live in this certain way. And there's a teaching and a knowledge of how things are done. And that knowledge and that tradition has been going on for over 100 years. And you got this way of life and this psyche that's developed in them. And now all of a sudden, so like Maranzano or a Castellano would have done better at a war with Bonanno because he has a way of understanding how Bonanno's thinking. But he don't think how John has a whole different thing. You can't really think about, because Maranzano knows, Castellano knows Bonanno's not going to tear the whole family apart just to win a war with me. He wants to preserve this Cosa Nostra just like I do. We have to keep our tradition going. There's a certain process probably he can understand. Does the cooking pot guy think a little bit? He comes with a different schooling, a different street people think more for the day. The cooking pot guy is a day thinker more than the lineage guy is thinking for when I'm not here no more. More oftentimes than not, he's trying to preserve something. When a guy is fighting for himself, he can do a little bit. He can be a little bit more damaging. Is the cooking pot guy playing by a different set of rules?
Well, tell me about Joe Bonanno. What did he try to do when he got in trouble?
Well, yeah, he well, it's a little blurry, but they wanted to push him out of his family. He tried to hold on. It was a civil war in his family. There's people say he was trying to kill Carlo and different people. We don't know, but we do know that the commission was going to depose him, and he tried to hold on to the family. Family went a different way, but he tried to. We know about the banana split, the banana war that happened.
Here's a guy with all that lineage, smart man, right? Royalty, Castellano. Didn't want to let go, didn't know how to let go. He's a guy that got lucky and went to Arizona. They didn't kill him and his two sons. But to go back to think into the boss's mind, and I think this is to your point again, the rules didn't apply to Paul. He made the rules everybody think they applied. But what did Paul know? And what did Paul do? He took junk money from Patsy Conti and several other guys, right? Turned a blind eye. Joe Gallo's son got pinched for junk, considered the family. Other guys he wanted to kill, lower level wise guys, scapegoat guys. Angelo Melli, long lineage with his family, got caught dealing drugs. As soon as he came out for jail, we would kill him. That was the order I got. As soon as he comes out of jail, we got to kill him. He's our crow. So when you get up to that boss mentality, the rules are for thee, not for me. And that leads to your point, which happens with most bosses when you get into that position. And the resentment comes from a guy like John Gotti or anybody else there saying, are you kidding me? I'm the street guy. That's where they have the edge. I'm the street guy. I put it up for you all these years. I put my balls up for you. We're doing the work. You're a hypocrite. I could think like a boss. I am a boss. I'm speaking for John. What does he say? I like to slap him in his mouth because he's a fish out of water. That's the cooker pot guy that you referenced. He's tired of seeing it, towing the line and waiting his turn. And then has to get punished severely for his guys breaking a cardinal rule in parentheses, of course, when he knows Paul's taking that money. Because Paul has the thinkings of a boss and royalty and thinks he could get away with it just because. But the other guys around him, the hungry people, the wolves, aren't seeing it that way. So John would have been a great boss. But without those tapes, I'm partial to the guy. But I knew both people. I seen people in that life that thought what they could be when maybe some of them shouldn't be. And I seen other guys that never got a chance to be boss. They stopped short because they didn't want us to have a revolution or overthrow anything and settled for being captains or administrative positions. And it worked out fine. Only one person could be boss. It's one chair, right? So a boss has different things, and the leadership skills and the likability and fearability go a long way. Hypocrisy is one of the most devastating things that anybody in life could do, no matter what business you're in, even in your house. So, but when you get to that level, when you're dealing with all these people, that somebody in that family that you need to recognize may want your chair one day, or is capable, as in Joe Messina's case, could take your chair. Don't tell me what I already know, because I'm going to be angry. And the guys that say that, the guy like George from Canada, George Gasha, got killed for it. Not challenging him, but pushing on the subject with TJ. Got him killed. So Joe Messina seen that this guy was strength. And he went. What did they kill George for? It was ridiculous. What did they kill Sonny Black for? Ridiculous. He wanted to be a rat. What was that? Speaks volumes. All these guys that killed rats or thought they would be rats, been ratted, worst.
Why does how does Lucky outsmart Maranzano? Outsmart all these guys in a life that he's supposed to know better? And this is the question that I want to ask you. What I find, cooking pot guys seen more pain. They hadn't, when you blasted your way and you went through hell to get up there, to be recognized. Remember, when you're born in there and your grandfather and your dad and all these people were there, it's a rite of passage.
It's easy.
Yes. Tommy Gambino can't get in unless his father's Carlo.
But I can stop you right there, right? You're right. You're right on point. I'm going to agree with you. And I told you as a young kid, I used to go to Paul's Club, right? Now, forget all the other little clubs where they knew me since I'm a kid. That's rite of passage, right? Go Jimmy Brown's Club, Paul Exact Club, Spiro's Club. Neighborhood. This is the boss's club, head of the commission. Everybody from all over the country and all the states, Sunday, there's something like that, or whatever. Everybody wants to see Paul or rub elbows and all that other nice stuff. We'll go see him. I'm a young guy. I would show up, and I told you, football uniform. I like to get those FBI surveillance photos. Softball uniforms. I was able to walk in that club as an associate, as a kid in my early 20s, 21, 22 years old. Just the way it was, with nobody frowning at me. No, that's just Michael. And all the new guys that I met, they didn't look at me as like, what's that kid doing here? He must be here for a reason. He's in Don Paulo's club. He must be somebody, related to somebody. He must have influence. There must be something with this kid that I was able to be there in that club. So that's the easy part for me. That's how I get to know everybody. And I get a soft hand getting in there. Where other guys, like you said, they have to kill their way there and then try to get accepted into there and be able to go to Paul's Club as an associate. Don't forget the Rickabones. Johnny Riccabone had a bunch of nephews. Never made. They got made. Some of them got made later on, right? But all of them would hang out there, all associates. Why are they there? A lot of them were soft. Real soft. Johnny Riccabone's son, Johnny was a skipper going way, but his family goes back to Sand in Sicily. The First Avenue crew, Second Avenue crew, Joe Riccabone. So they were there, but you couldn't fill it up with all murderers. You know who else was there? Louis Melito, Sammy Gravano, Nino Gaggi, Roy DeMeo. I mean, you could go down a list of all these killers. Now, Nino was a captain at this time, But all the other guys, Roy got made later, right? Nino had to really push to get Roy made. Why? Paul maybe didn't see this guy's just wild, too violent. Maybe that's why Nino had to keep pushing for him to get straightened out. So, yeah, there is definitely an easy way to get in. Look, I think Michael talks about it also, right? You can't deny that he got. I know Sammy cracked him on this, not physically, trying to crack his case of who should get straightened out first. No, Michael, if he got married, made in 75 or 76 or whatever the year, it don't even matter. What's the difference? He got made, right? Why is everybody picking on a date? Who cares? But if he got in through his father and he had the right schooling and was capable, you don't have to be a killer. You don't have to say, oh, that's the future boss. Michael's the future boss. You don't have to look at him like that. He's an asset. Gravano was an asset in another way. He was a killer. Most killers are expendable. Look at the mistake by putting administration. Again, I knew we use the same things because I want everybody to understand the people we're talking to. Now, you talk about Lucky. Who's Lucky's crew going into the 20s? Who's his crew? Vito? Tommy Lucchese? Right? Don Chicha Scalish. I mean, you're talking about legends of that life. My grandfather would meet him down on Elizabeth Street in the club, Don Paduzza's club. They would all be there in the 20s, into the 30s. So these were the seeds with all these guys. The guys we just named became bosses, most of them, of families. So there is a profound difference in guys from those days and how they as young, even without lineage, got into the life than later on, and even till today.
Yeah, historically speaking, unquestionably, if you take Carlo Gambino, Joe Profaci, Joe Bonanno, Tommy Lucchese, and you put them all in the room, you say, we can only bring one guy in. You put Sammy the Bull there, you put Michael Franzese there. They're all taking Franzese because they trust Franzese. They don't trust these people outside, these cooking pot guys who don't know this life. That's when Cosa Nostra started to change, when they started putting value on people like Sammy. Sammy was only supposed to be used for some knuckle dragging. Hey, go beat that guy with a bat real quick, and if you get arrested, whatever, we don't need you anyway. They were used for like the grunt work, the dirt work. But if you have a choice, then pick somebody. First of all, you might get in. You ain't going to the You're not going to the administration. A guy like Sammy in the 40s, 50s, he could have never been an underboss back then. But Franzese, he's supposed to be here, as how those guys would think of a guy like Franzese. Rite of passage. You're born to come here. You are born to be here. So tell me if you agree with this. If I had to say the biggest difference I find between the two different mindsets, cooking pot guys don't dither. They don't sit around overthinking, pondering all day long. Paul should have. Had Paul been a cooking pot boss, he'd have wiped out. He would have went to Chin or somebody if he had to, and he would have wiped out the Gotti crew and everybody loyal to him in 1 second. Quick, fast. They don't sit around waiting. Maranzano made the same mistake. He sat around bullshitting, and he ended up getting killed by Lucky. And because Lucky, cooking pot guy, they don't wait around. They have seen so much being on them streets and the way they came up. And I find cooking pot guys move much faster. And cooking pot guys are very they are paranoid to a certain extent. What's this? Captain with a captain? John was all his mind was worried about somebody getting too powerful. Paul would have never said, "What's this? Captain with a captain?" Because his thinking is different. He's not letting.
Yeah, they're never going to challenge me. This is the way it is. They're not going to challenge me. And where John was already, he was already thinking about being the boss. John wanted to be the boss, and he had the skills to do it, and he had the following to do it. Whereas Paul, instead of Paul just going to chin and wiping those guys out, what did Carl do with Neil? He embraced him. And Neil, they tried to usurp him, but he embraced him. He was smart enough to say, let's avoid war. We'll give him a position. You know, these things happen. He was smart enough to say he could have killed Neil. He could they're like Wild Bill, make him the underboss, call him in, clip him. He didn't do that because it was for the good of the family. He didn't want a war because it would have led to a war. Guys would have been killed. But Carl was Neil loved the life. He knew the rules. All the rules are broken by everybody. That's the whole thing about the boss, where you're at. They just feel they can do it and everybody else can't. So, you know, Paul's move should have been to make amends with Neil. Neil was dying. What do you want, Mr. Neil? What do you want to do with John? We'll put a couple of his guys on the shelf for face value. And I'd like John to have my position as underboss. Paul, Neil, I don't think that's a good idea. Paul, if you don't do this, there's going to be problems in the family. I think you should do it. That's what should have been done. Paul should have went and made John the underboss. Even though we're all, because the hypocrisy is there. If Paul's ass was clean and pure, John never resented him and called him a fish out of water because he didn't understand in John's mind. What are you being hypocrites about? It's all about hypocrisy. You want to hurt my guys, take me down. You know, it wasn't going to happen. John was not going to wait around, as you articulated, for something bad to happen. And he wasn't getting no position, and he was being threatened to even be taken down from the captain, maybe. There was something going to happen. They just didn't know what. In their minds, those are the street guys. Let's react. Screw this. And that's what happened. Paul didn't think it through. He didn't think it through like Carl. Carl thought it through. Like others thought, Frank Costello thought it through. Other guys thought it through. You know, what happened with Carmine Presco? He had about 8 guys that took over that whole family and still hold on to it. Then everybody's dead. They're still holding on to it.
Michael, if you look at the history of the 5 families, cooking pot guys always mopped the floor with these lineage guys. I mean, Magliocco, Profaci, tied up like cooking pot guys. Like, they play by a different set of rules that these guys are thinking, we would never do this to a boss. A boss, you won't tie up a boss. They can't think how this guy's thinking, which is why, in my opinion, you shouldn't bring them in. Why would you make these guys? You don't even know. These are not the kind of guys you are. So I oftentimes wonder what attracts these guys to the lineage guys.
Well, you need guys that are very capable and instill fear and do the work. You know,
but lineage guys can kill. They were killers too. They can kill.
Oh, without a doubt, no question. But you need, when you rise to a different level, you have those guys that, like I use this word often, those guys like Roy DeMeo are expendable. It's only a matter of time. Now, if you got a guy that committed 10, 12, 14 murders for you, you really want to take a shot with him down the road? You're always worried about you got to go sleep at night unless this guy's really close to you and you really know him. Junior Presco, like I said, look what he did. Look how many good guys in that family he killed. Like Joe Messina. Just said Junior didn't rat. Joe did. Big difference. Junior took his time. He did a lot of years, Junior, before he passed away. But Junior killed a lot of good men in that family just because they could have been, in his mind, a threat. That's why they had civil wars, you know. The gallows, go back to the gallows guys. Being mistreated. You know, being passed over on certain things. Not being able to earn. Don't do this, don't do that. And then, you know, they're starving down there. So that's where you have to have a boss that has to, I'll give you another example again, referring to John, because it's all on tape. You got to make these guys eat. You can't make guys go on welfare. He knew it is once there's a wolf out there that has no food, what are they going to do? They got to hunt. They got to eat. So he knew that because he was that guy. He didn't lose sight of that. John never would have lost sight of that, where a guy like Paul did. And others, they did. They got too comfortable. The Magliocos, like you said. Come on, they were a joke after a while. Who's going to listen to them? Junior's going to listen to them. The Gallows that never thought Joe Colombo should be boss. They thought he was soft. He was given the position. Would he really come up to be a boss? Did he really get the training to be a boss? No, he was given that position.
Is there any lineage with him?
His father was murdered. His father might have been made. I'm not sure about that, but his father's murdered. His father was got caught with somebody's wife, I think, or something like that. He met a really bad ending.
Do you think cooking pot guys are bad for their life?
No.
For what Cosa Nostra was intended to be, what it was supposed to be, and what it meant.
No, you need those animals. I'm putting the term of animals, a bad saying, because I could have been one of those guys. You know what I mean? The guy that just send him out to do work. That's why Frankie the Chico, Michael stopped volunteering. See, a guy like Frankie the Chico, he's boss mentality. He could have been boss easily and been a great boss. He had the teachings to a young guy like me. Stop volunteering. They'll make you stop. Michael, they make us chopping up bodies now. He was sick. So that's the kind of guy you want, a tough guy that everybody fears, right? His father was in life, but had a lot of good teachers around him. So, no, you do need the brutal guys. You need the brutal guys, no question. But they got to be your brutal guys. You got to own them and control them. That's the whole thing.
The problem is they're not usually that loyal. Cooking pot guys brought you down.
Yeah. Well,
you're a lineage guy.
Yeah. But
you were very loyal to the Gottis.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. But again, look who was the boss. Look what they put in place. I told you it was the dumbest administration in the history of the mob.
But they don't know. See, that's the thing. They don't know. When you look at the fact of how bad cooking pot guys have been, they decimated Cosa Nostra. You just said Messino, Sammy, Gotti, and you named other guys. I mean, Persico. These guys ruined this tradition that had lived all the way up, purely getting stronger until they started getting in. Carlo was worried about that. The Americanized gangsters, the guys that didn't come from the school of Sicily, the guys who didn't come up the way we came up. When you look at that, Cosa Nostra went like this from the time it came into this country and never stopped going up. And then you see the introduction of they were running out of lineage guys. And then they infused this thing that was always on its way up, and they infused it with these cooking pot guys. And then it starts coming down. And guys like yourself, who was 3-4 generations in there, they turn on you. They turn on people. Sammy, never would a lineage guy or made boss, as I say in my book, he wouldn't chop up all his friends, kill all his friends. Remember, that would have never happened. These cooking pot guys came in with a different type of a mentality, and they wasn't good for Cosa Nostra. And I would say even their mindset was so outside of what Cosa Nostra was that they destroyed it. They broke it.
Yeah, what do I say about the 80s? There was something in the air in the 80s.
Cooking pots.
Every family was whacking out their own guys. They were eating their own. The 80s were bad, and you just think all the bosses that came out of there is, it dovetails into exactly what you're trying to say. Not what you're trying to say, what you do say. And you said it well. the whole mindset changed, and it created a lot of vacuums. And again, it's lack of talent that we wind up in my family was Peter's the boss. Embarrassment. Again, the guy's dead. Stood up. He died in prison. But the only thing he had to say, his claim to fame was he was John Gotti's brother. That's it. The guy made many mistakes. One of them was me.
Like Roy DeMeo, Gaspipe, Nicky Scarfo, Vic Amuso, John Gotti, Sammy Messino, Carmine Persico. Would you consider all those guys cooking pot guys?
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Did these guys help their life in any way?
Crushed it. Crushed it.
How are they good for the life?
Because their roles were displaced. They took different roles. They took leadership roles. And once you get into leadership role, who stops that? You have to usurp them. You have to kill them. Like with Gaspipe, giving all those young guys orders to go clipping everybody. They should have called him and clipped him. But they were dead loyal to this guy. They killed their own guy just to get the Lucchese guys mad at us. His brother was in jail doing life. They killed a great guy for nothing. How do you listen to somebody like that? But these are the guys that wind up in power. And that's the mistake. And what they do, they would have killed you if you were running away. Look at the commission case, destroyed that. That's what really started it, is the commission case when they took out all the bosses. That's what led the void. Fat Tony, come on, the guy was brilliant. You don't even know what Tony did in his life except make money and run some really successful businesses, the garbage industry, etc. In that life, does anybody know who Tony killed? No. Oh. So they weren't brutal. Did they mean business? Did Chin mean business? Did Benny the Squid? Nobody even talks about Benny the Squid. The guy's a great boss, right? Put that family back in place. Nice and easy. And if you stepped out of line with them, you went. But they didn't indiscriminately kill people just because.
But see, to me, it feels like you're making my point that these guys were not good for Cosa Nostra. You would be there today. You'd be hanging out right now on 18th Avenue if it wasn't for cooking pot guys. If it wasn't for that new wave that came through in the 80s, that was a new style. And remember, Cosa Nostra was the only organization that was living on decade after decade after decade, where like the Rothschild Empire or something, where the fifth generation is now these guys keep coming in and taking over the same thing. You never saw that with crime groups, gangsters, just a sheer street guy. He had a little gang, and when they went to jail, the whole thing broke up, and that was the end. It wasn't a continuous thing, like we got to keep this thing going. Once cooking pot guys were more like that. It was just about me and what I'm doing and preserving my time and my way. But that wasn't what Cosa Nostra was supposed to be. It was forever.
Yeah, no, it was today. We're not going to do today mentality. And you're right. Those guys that once they reach boss, you make your point. Once they reach boss, because that's the whole premise of your book, is once they reach they were bad for the life. Exactly. But you need them in the life when they're soldiers and captains. But to put them in administrative, because your point is talk from a boss's position. You are correct. I will agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't be up there. And I've said this not because of your book now. I've said this for a long time about certain peoples, the people's names that we know about. Look what happened to Mangano with Albert. Go back to Albert. What did he do? He kills his Sicilian boss, his brother. He started killing captains. He started killing soldiers. And then what happened? Albert was a lucky guy. Right? He was a lucky guy. Vito guy. They were all hung out when they were kids, growing up and making it in that life. And what did he do? He got in and started killing Sicilians. Weren't get last. He had the same mentality as the guys that made their way into the 80's. But then they cured that problem. They banged him out right away. What did he last? 5 years? 6 years, maybe? So what was he doing? Through his paranoia, and he shouldn't have been. He was a worker. He Murder Incorporated guy. He made him a boss. He made himself a boss, right? Never going to last.
Yeah. When you said to Junior, we should reduce the roles by 10% and essentially close the book, stop making guys.
Yeah, well,
that's lineage thinking. That's not cooking pot thinking. That's things are getting bad. These guys we got here, these ain't the kind of guys we need for this. They're only going to hurt everything. So that's, I guess, wouldn't the mob have been better to just close the books again when they hit the 80s and they started seeing some of these animals come in? Because the mob went like in a circle where it's like the Black Hand that started out that was like vicious freaking guys. And then they were like, these guys are a little too much. And they made it a little bit more orderly. And hey, we got to get some approval on these murders. We can't just be going around setting freaking businesses on fire and stuff like that. Let's make this thing a little. But they kind of came back in the 80s. That's what those guys had to look like the Manonera.
Manonera, yeah. You're right. You have a great point. It was a bad time. The 80s were a very bad time, real turning point. And then the vacuum, like I said, with the commission case, and then other people that were left in the street, decimated the whole premise of what they built for over decades in this country. There was a lot of violence, sure, through the years. Don't forget, there was a war from the teens until 1931 when they finished it. They were just about a war. A lot of guys lost their lives. So,
but who was the war between? The Costello Maranzano War was really a war between the Mustache Pete's, i.e., the maid bosses, versus the Young Turks, the cooking pots, the new guys, the guys, and they ran over them and just took over the whole organization.
But you know what? There was peace after that, though. They didn't cook it. They didn't start cooking potting everybody from the top down at that point, right?
Yeah.
They took some of those lessons and didn't start clipping all those guys, their own guys.
Who would you rather serve under? A cooking pot boss or a maid boss? Lineage boss?
Well, I'm going to say lineage boss. But again, the exception for me would be John. Because John was not killing his guys. He was different from me. John gave everybody a fair shot, including his own guys. If he was a cooking pot guy, right? And his only goal was to make himself look good, he would have killed Angelo. Angelo had a reason to get killed, not for just the drugs. We talked about this before, was the hit on the Gaspipe. Attempted hit on Gaspipe. Well, they hit him, but they didn't kill him. But still, that's too far. And John didn't clip his guy. He could have.
So you don't have you won't firmly say the cooking pot leaders really changed that life and really broke the power. So, I mean, is your position that if we call the mob dead, not meaning it's not here in some sense, but we know what I mean by the mob isn't what Gleason was talking about in that interview. In that sense, do you blame the cooking pot guys for the destruction?
Yeah, 100%. Started in the 80s, way before I was ever made or anything like that. It started there. And I'll even throw in Sicily, what there was going on over there. Just 1,000, literally 1,000 plus guys were murdered out of it in the 80s. Again, what was it? Drugs, money, jealousy, power. There was one family just decimated everybody.
Well, that was fun. Guys, what do you guys think between the cooking pot boss, the maid boss? What's your thoughts?
we'll see you Sunday where we'll discuss all your questions. I think we'll get a lot of questions about this.
I hope so. It'll be fun.
We'll see. Thank you. Close it out.
God bless everybody. We had a little fun today, and love talking about RJ's book and see what was in his head and with his creation over 12 years. It means a lot to us, and I know it does to you. You got great support. Thank you for supporting him, and be well. We'll see you Sunday-ish, maybe early this Sunday, maybe 11-ish. I'm trying to make my way off. So my son Michael will be here soon, tomorrow. And I'll have Anthony and Michael together. We're going to get a couple of steaks and relax, drink a little bit. And maybe we'll post some pictures or do a live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely should do that.
Yeah. Good night, everybody. God bless. Keep smiling. Stay well.
Peace and love.